A lot of people have obviously mentioned how Kurt was this reluctant icon, how he wasn't into the whole interview kind of celebrity side of it. He was just about venting and getting his stuff out. So was that ever on your mind when you were doing this intimate piece about him?
Well, there's a couple ways that I've sort of can respond to that. You know, Kurt often spoke out of both sides of his mouth. And that's not a criticism, that's just that's probably the most consistent comment I got from Wendy, Kim, Tracy, and Courtney, and Chris. Everybody. Kurt spoke out of both sides of his mouth. Right. And Kim sums it up best in the film. Like, he would often rebel against the very thing that he wanted. Privacy is no different. There's an impression that Kurt was an intensely private person. But then this is a man who sat for a 25-hour authorized interview when he was 24 or 25.
Yeah.
This is a man who took his newborn infant down the red carpet when she was a few weeks old. Neither of which I would imagine Bob Dylan would have done. Now, I look at Bob Dylan as an intensely private person. And even when the whole world was watching him, he was producing children and keeping his family protected.
Yeah.
So I think Kurt played out, I think he wanted it both ways.
Yeah.
And this concern that the film may be so intimate, I mean, it's the weirdest. This is like the first film that may be so intimate. I mean, I thought that was the idea of a documentary, is you're supposed to be intimate. But apparently some people are troubled by it because Kurt is a private person. But most of this film is Kurt's art.
Which is the most private thing of all, probably, isn't it?
Well, no, it's revealing, but it's not private.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I create art for people to see, and I don't think Kurt was any different.
Yeah.
So, and in terms of his journal writing, this isn't a guy who hid his journals under lock and key under a bed. He'd write stuff and leave it out, and if you came over, it'd be sitting right there. And if you want either any further indication, his journal entries that invite you to come go through his stuff and figure him out. Yeah. The first thing we hear Kurt say in the movie is, "Hey, come here. I want to show you something."
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't know. I understand where this sentiment comes from. Yeah. But at the same time, and it's also interesting because I don't mean this in a crass way, but nobody's going to hurt Kurt's feelings anymore. And so then who are we protecting? Well, really the responsibility goes to next of kin. And I don't think a fan has more, should have more say than Kurt's own child. And this is the film she wants people to see. This is her life. These are her parents. And so I would hope that people, can have, appreciate, not be concerned by, but really appreciate the intimacy of this film. But like I said, I think most of the reason this film feels as intimate as it does isn't the haircutting scene. It's the audio of Kurt by himself drawing.
Yeah.
Or, it's just an intimate film because Kurt expressed himself so beautifully in all of his work. And he was so prolific that the film is able to really get inside his head in a way that we rarely are able to with the subject, because we're not dealing with this degree of primary source material. And even if you're doing a film on a painter, you're only dealing with one part of film. I mean, Kurt was the perfect subject in that there's audio and there's image. There was sound collage, music, spoken word on the audio front, sound design, and then you have painting, Super 8 films, all photography, and all this other stuff. So it's sort of like one of the ideas behind the film is that all artists create autobiographies through their work, that our art sort of tells the story of our lives. And if you believe that, then very few people of my generation created a more complete cinematic autobiography than Kurt. Because he tells the story both visually and orally. And so in a way, it's the sort of the ultimate sort of subject, particularly for someone like myself.
I think the people that have, picked up on the intimacy in a negative way are the fans that almost feel like they have ownership of his legacy. I think that's what it is.
That's the challenge with this film, is everybody's so protective over Kurt. And it's one thing if it's Chris or Wendy that are protective over Kurt. It's a little weird when it's a fan. And I get that they don't want him to be exploited. But listen, I mean, we're talking about this. It's a little off subject, only that this film has been embraced really intensely by the hardcore fans. And this issue we're talking about is really a sort of minor thing that I catch, like 1 out of every 25 or 40 tweets. But the general consensus from the fans is, great appreciation. I was driving with to a screening last night, and I was looking, because screenings were getting all over the UK, so I was looking at Twitter, and I was talking to the driver, and I was like, all right, man, I am not going to edit. I'm going to read you the next. Let's sit here and let's see what the next 10 things that come in are. And it was just like, it was really, you asked me if I look at stuff. Yeah, that was really satisfying.
Yeah, I bet.
It was really satisfying to know that people appreciate the effort. So I could not look at stuff and never know and pretend that I only make films for myself and I don't care what other people think, but that would be a little selfish and self-serving. So
when you compare, I don't know if you do compare the Kurt Cobain one to the Rolling Stones one, when you look at it now since creating the Kurt Cobain piece, do you see those missed opportunities because they're a bit more, protective and gave you less freedom? Do you think,
the Stones?
Yeah.
I thought that at one point, but then, but at some point when we were finishing the film, I think that, like, for what it is, there was a point where I had to change directions, not for reasons that I necessarily thought I should at the moment, but it might have been for the good at the end of the day. I mean, I think that's a totally different situation. Listen, when you go into a situation like that you sign a deal, you sign a contract. I know I don't have final say. And you take a huge risk when you enter into that engagement. And I always have a clause in my contract that says I can pull my name off if I don't have final cut.
That's a vital clause, isn't it, actually?
I wouldn't do a film without it because, I direct advertising, your name's not on it. So, it's like, and I don't have final say on my commercials. Okay. So, but my name's not on it. So, I being hired to do a job, I do the job, and like anyone else that does a job. And sometimes I hear filmmakers like get in situations where they knew what they were getting into, and then they're like, and I'm just like, dude, you knew what you were getting into. Okay, there were times where it were incredibly uncomfortable for me on Crossfire Hurricane, but I can't blame anyone but myself for putting myself in that situation. And at the end of the day, I think, you have to decide for yourself. You have to weigh. It's important at the beginning of a film to understand if you don't have final cut, what concerns the subject may have, or the person who has final cut. So you can sort of establish that up front to make sure that you're comfortable to work within the boundaries. Although I don't think this will be much of an issue for me moving forward, because I've decided that I will not make a film anymore if I don't have final say.
I think you've earned that right now, haven't you?
It's not even an earned right. I mean, it is in the sense that I could show, look, here's a body of work, speak to my subjects. Yeah. They're all, at the end of the day, Bob Evans, and I have a wonderful relationship, and Francis and I have a great relationship, and I sort of, but it's not that it's been earned. It's just that I don't, if I can't make another film, that's fine. But I'm not going to spend years of my life invested in something that I don't have any say over. I'm too old at this point. I don't have that many, I don't know how many more films I have, so I want to make sure that I pick them wisely. And I mean, look, there may be some incredible circumstances with the subject, if President Obama said I could film the last 100 days in the White House and, insisted that he have final cut, I might go for it.
Only might.
Well, only might, for one, and a lot of that decision would probably be based on the experience.
Yeah.
That like, I mean, that was part of the thing with the Stones. I was a little ambivalent about taking on the assignment, to be honest. And my wife said, look, it's only a year. It wasn't even that, it was less. And, who are you to turn down spending a year with the Rolling Stones? I mean, just the life experience alone would be worth it. And, that was like, yeah, it's like, so I had to, when all said and done with Crossfire Hurricane, that was a totally memorable, awesome experience. And the footage was great to cut, and the music's awesome. Like, I love the Stones. Like, you asked me about if I was a fan of the Stones. Yeah, I was a big fan of the Stones when I started that film. I hadn't been writing books about them, but I listened to their music, a lot. So that was, that was truly, that was really special.
Talking about, you mentioned there the extensive amount of time you spend on these projects. With this one, there's 6 years, I think, of legal wrangling. Was there any moments during that time where you thought, oh, sod it, I can't be bothered with this? Or
I didn't even think this was happening. I didn't invest that much in it over those 6 years. I mean, there would be little tiny periods where I would, but, in film, there are so many projects that come and go, or you think that they're going to happen, that I've learned that the way to maximize your time is to try to invest as little as possible before you know that they're going to actually happen. And then once you know it's happening, okay, you're in, and now it's all or not, it's 150% full on, but up to that point, you got to sort of protect your time. And so I think initially when I first met with Courtney, I assumed it was a go, and we were going to be moving forward pretty fast, and I'd have the film done by 2009. But then I totally forgot. I mean, there was a point where I think around 2010 or 2011 where I just, it wasn't even, calling anymore.
Yeah.
Just, I'm not going to invest in this anymore. And then some stuff happened, and we got the ball rolling again.